much. Thank you for inviting me. And actually, thank you for the public opinion and citizens question, because I think this is right now at the heart of this whole process of moving forward towards more defense in Europe, towards implementing parts of the CSDP that have not been implemented yet. And in general, the fact that there is public support behind that is perhaps one of the reasons that this time this may have better chances to work than it has before, as has been mentioned by a number of the other speakers. With regards to public opinion, your question is quite timely as well, because we recently had some publications in the EPRS concerning the expectations of citizens from Europe. And apart from what you mentioned about the mutual assistance clause, which is quite astounding that even though public in Europe seems to not know what the mutual assistance clause is, nevertheless they support its implementation. What we also saw in this research is that there is a large, about two-thirds majority of European citizens who would like to see more Europe in security and defense, and that there has been a stable support for this throughout the past decade, so it's not something new. And then there's interestingly 71% that would like to see more Europe in the protection of the external border. And that's quite significant because in the citizens' or public's mind, external and internal security are not that separated. We have finally seen, actually, that the External Action Service, the Council, have also brought this internal-external variable most recently into their documents, into the priorities of the High Representative, into the Commission Working Program quite intensely. And this is quite significant because it resonates with the way the public sees security. They see internal and external security as intricately linked and undivided. So I think that the 71% that would also like to see more Europe in the protection of external borders is quite significantly linked to CSDP. Interestingly enough, apart from these statistics, which seem to be quite consistent in the past years, there was a recent survey by the Pew Research Center that showed that actually one thing that has changed is support for increase in defense spending in Europe. While until 2016, public support for more defense spending was relatively low, 2016 is the first year since 2002 that we have seen that many EU member states have such a significant amount of the public supporting more spending for defense. And of course, it would be unreasonable to not think that this is linked to a strong perception of threats directly to them inside the EU. So the public wants more security, and while there have been various reasons for which a more defense union may not advance as is hoped in the next years, this is one reason why I think we have a good time to look into the possibility of more defense in Europe. Now, what does it mean? You asked how can the EU respond to this public expectation and use this momentum for more integration in the defense and security sector? I think there's two ways to look at this answer. The one is what can be practically done, what is the policy, the operational part of it, a lot on which has been said on this panel. And the other one is how to package this up and present it to the public. Because as you rightly pointed out in the meeting we had before this panel, a lot of those things don't mean a lot to the public. CSDP doesn't mean a lot. Article 44, Article 42, 42.7, PESCO, they don't really mean too much. So of course, one side, which is the what to do, is a number of things that have been mentioned here that are in the Commission Working Program, that are in the Global Strategy and will be in the Action Plan for its implementation, in the Bratislava Declaration. It has to do with operational planning, with permanent headquarters, with implementation of permanent structured cooperation, with reforming the battle groups, with more momentum for rapid force generation, with a number of issues that the experts here have pointed out more than I have and are aware of and know much more than I do. But this is the operational side. How to package this for the public, which I think right now is a really big concern, both for the Commission and for the Council. We see that repeatedly packaged in one way or another in various speeches, in Mr. Tusk's letter, in the State of the European Union. What does public opinion want to see? It wants to see the European Union as a locus of security provision, as it has looked to the states, to their individual states so far. It wants to see that not bearing a significant cost financially on national budgets, but also on what the public perceives as the European way of life. So combining security with no infringement on freedom, no cost on other areas in which the Commission, the EU, has become a beacon of where they look for their policies, no costs on jobs, no costs on national budgets, on the welfare state. So it is a very big challenge to give the public what they want. But a way to work towards that is to actually look into communicating in a more consistent way the benefits of more defense cooperation, as we have done, for example, here in the EPRS, by showing that in terms of what it could mean in terms of jobs to invest more in European defense cooperation, particularly in research and technology, what it would mean in terms of reducing the budget. President Juncker also referred to that, to the possible amounts. So I think this is one way to make the public not just have the expectation for the CSDP and Defense Union to move ahead, but also to use public opinion as momentum to move towards that. And this brings me to my second point, I think I have time for that, which is there is one area which is what does the EU need to give its citizens? How can the EU satisfy this expectation and this need for more security? But there is also a question of can it, and I don't mean in terms of capabilities, but is this the right time for CSDP to move forward? Is this the right time for more defense union? Because of course it is hard to ignore that at the moment there are various proposals floating around through various institutions and member states, but is this the right time? And I think there are various factors that we can take into consideration when we discuss this, acting either as veto points or as enabling factors, but I would group them into more or less three categories of factors that we have to look into when thinking of whether this is the right time for this move towards more integration in security and defense. The first group I would call internal, and this group, here I would think of four things. Is there political will? This has been mentioned a number of times. It seems that there is will, interestingly, on various sides. If one looks at the member state side, if the Franco-German proposal, the Italian proposal, the EU-Med proposal, the Athens Declaration, even the Visegrad Group, we can see that there is a number of proposals of areas which mirror themselves in these proposals, and they also resonate with what the Commission has proposed and what the Parliament has been calling for a number of years. So in that sense, there seems to be political will and not so far apart in terms of what the various member states are asking for. And of course, we have on the supranational side, on the Commission side, a number of declarations for the launch of this new project. So in a way that is perhaps too theoretical, one could say that we have both a bottom-up but also a top-down willingness to move or to attempt to move forward with this project. We have internally various other factors that may act in favor or not of this. One would be obviously Brexit, it's been mentioned, and its evolution. The other factor that I think might be helpful is that the External Action Service itself has matured. A number of times it's been mentioned here that one change that needs to be implemented is a restructuring towards a more efficient operational and managerial model of the External Action Service. And this, the High Representative herself has pointed out. I think the External Action Service has reached a maturity point where this is a possible consideration. So this category of internal factors is one that I wanted to point out. Externally, of course, there is a number of issues that are pressuring towards more CSDP, towards more cooperation in security and defense. The geopolitical environment that we are all aware of, Syria, Ukraine, Libya, the uncertainty about elections and political developments in other partners of the EU, the rise of new security providers that are competing with the EU and are gaining in force. The nature of threats that is changing, that definitely bridges this internal-external divide that I mentioned before, the radicalization, terrorism, hybrid threats, all of this demands thinking of how to counter it on a non-national member state level. And of course the realization that, and I think this is the really interesting point in the move from the EU security strategy to the global strategy, that soft power is not enough. I think we saw in the European security strategy in 2003 a vision of how soft power would be the means towards the EU being a global security provider and a European security provider, but the global strategy takes this to a more smart power kind of approach. And there have been think tanks like Egmont that criticize the global strategy about its lack of focus on democracy. I would say it's not so much a non-focus on democracy, it's more a pragmatic approach on how soft power might not always lead to democracy promotion. So externally, the environment is conducive to the kind of move towards a more advanced CSDP than we have at the moment. I also think initiatives such as capacity building in third countries and security sector reform, which are now in the proposals for how to move ahead with EU defense, are definitely related to the understanding of this external environment. And third and last, I think financial factors are, of course, as always, relevant. This is a difficult moment to think of whether this will be something that facilitates or hinders more integration in security and defense. There have been declining, as you know, defense budgets in most member states, declining budgets for research and development in the defense area. A reluctance to contribute to capabilities for CSDP is definitely linked to the financial aspect. And of course, there will be the impact of Brexit on this budget if and how it happens. We do not know yet how this will be. But I think here again, the discussion currently about moving ahead with a new security and defense action plan and the package with the three parts that Federica Mogherini has proposed is quite aware of the link between financing and CSDP and discussions about incentives for states to participate in further defense cooperation such as VAT exemptions and support from the European Investment Bank may also be a factor that enables this. Thank you very much.